last game and expected to come back for and play in this one. So, Michael, with all that being said, who do you like in the Sugar Bowl?
I mean, this is hard because, I've been a Kansas State proponent all season long. Except when they lost to Tulane. You and I both kind of called that one early in the season because it was a sort of a trap game and a down game for them. But this is their national championship game when you get to play Alabama. It's a big deal. The team's going to be hyped. Kleiman's a good coach. They're finishing the season. They're finishing their season on a high. So I think, but how do you bet against Nick Saban? How? He's got everybody coming back, as you just mentioned. He's the greatest coach of all time. This team's going to be focused a little bit more than they normally would be in a bowl game because they're not playing for a playoff. They're not playing for a national championship. So everything speaks to me to take Kansas State because I like anything over 7. But I'm going to take Alabama. I'm not betting against Nick Saban. I think that he's going to really send a message to his team and say, listen, even if we don't make it, you guys, it's almost like punishment. You guys can't play for the national championship. Well, here's your punishment. You have to play, this team in this game, and you have to prove that you're legit and win by 20. So I'm going to take Alabama.
So I've stepped on the train tracks against Alabama a couple times this year. It hasn't been as scary as in years past, as you know, with this Alabama team, a little bit more flawed than some of these ones we've seen in the past couple of years. They did get the awesome news with all the guys opting in. Surprised me. I didn't think Bryce Young was going to play. I didn't think Anderson was going to play.
It's Saban. The culture there is you just can't even describe the culture.
So, I mean, but even so, now the market's flooding money in on Alabama. I'm happy to take the 7.5 points with Kansas State. Number one, they can exploit teams that are flawed, that have like clearly delineated weaknesses like Alabama does. We've seen that over and over with this Kansas State team coached by Kleiman. They're sort of like a gnat. And if they see that you got a scab, they'll just keep poking it the whole game. I think what that scab is here, it's Alabama's run defense, which is not very good. Alabama's pass defense is way better. But I think Deuce Vaughn projects to have a huge game in this one. This morning, the first thing I did when I woke up was I checked what my book had for the Deuce Vaughn rushing yard prop, and I pounded that over. So that's something I'm taking in addition to it. But the Tide's run defense, number 81 in success rate, number 99 in efficiency. So I think the strategy of just sort of pounding things with Deuce Vaughn, trying the left, trying the right, doing all that sort of stuff, and then funneling him the touches in the passing game, going more conservative with it to him, and then the inline tight end, stuff like that. And then you have your play action shots downfield. But as long as that run game's going, Kansas State's not going to need to overextend Will Howard in this game. And again, we'll see about Adrian Martinez. I do think Adrian Martinez can have a utility here, coming in off the bench and sub packages 4 runs. Because again, the way that you attack this Alabama defense, it's their run defense. And then on the other side, Kansas State, they have a top 25 rush rate in the entire nation. Well, Alabama's just about as pass happy as Kansas State is run happy. But I think one potential issue for Alabama on that side of the ball is, number one, their receivers aren't good. We've seen that, all season long. It's been one of the shocking things about this Alabama team. We were accustomed every year to seeing multiple first-round picks. They do not have a first-round receiver on that roster. They might not even have a 4th-round receiver on that roster. And the strength of the Kansas State defense, it's their pass defense. Have a pretty solid secondary, and they have a stud edge rusher. They can get after the quarterback. So we'll see how that stuff manifests. But the Tide's passing offense, 19th and 17th in passing success rate and efficiency. Kansas State's defense is 29 and 28 in those two categories. So I think they can do enough to tamper down on that Alabama passing attack. The other thing you have to mention, Chris Kleiman in postseason in his career, this is going back to the FCS as well, but 12-6-1 against the spread. Getting those 7.5 points, I'm going to take it with Kansas State. My adjusted line in that game is actually only Alabama minus 3.3, even being at full strength. So
Kansas State plays the SEC well too. They're 4-2 in their last 6 games. Covering the spread against the SEC. You mentioned Kleiman's success in bowl games. Neutral site games, Kansas State's good against the spread as well. They're 5-1. So, he does get them up for big games. I'm glad I don't know, because a lot of things, You remember we had Florida, Utah. Florida, Oregon State, we thought was a lock. But then there was a couple things that happened over the last couple of days where I just can't explain for the life of me why, Oklahoma stayed within 10 points of Florida State and why Pitt won outright against UCLA. So I'm glad I don't know. I'm glad I don't have an idea. I'm betting on the greatest coach. I'm betting on 108.5 for Deuce Vaughn over is tough. I mean, that's a tough one. I do like. There's a prop I saw. Bryce Young over 2.5 touchdown passes. I would hit that because it's a plus 145 for you. I think he's going to go out the way Bryce Young wants to go out. And honestly, there's an argument that can be made, and I'm going to make this argument on my website, that Alabama wasted the best quarterback they've ever had. And I think Bryce Young is going to show us all that once again in this bowl game, have a huge game. I know they don't have great wide receivers. Ja'Cory Brooks, I think, is pretty good. I think he's going to step up. They trimmed some of the fat, getting rid of a couple of guys in the portal. I'm taking Alabama, not with a ton of confidence, but if you're going to make me bet against Saban, I'm just not going to do it. So I think we disagree on this one, which is good because when we agree, we don't seem to hit well.
For sure. Yeah. And by the way, I can tell you why Oklahoma State within 10. It was because Florida State's receivers dropped like 3 sure touchdowns down the field. It was crazy. And they dropped way more than 3 balls. I don't know what's going on with those Florida State receivers. I think they were in those Cheez-It rooms, with the care packages, and they had like the Cheez-It crumbles on their hands.
Well, Johnny Wilson has like the biggest hands you're ever going to see on a human being.
Yeah.
But throughout high school, we had this debate about whether he should be a 5-star or not. And the reason he wasn't is because he couldn't catch the ball consistently. And there was also a lackadaisical thing about him where if he did drop one, he would sort of disengage. So that was frustrating for sure. We don't want to talk about old stuff because they're wounds that we're opening here. But my point on this is if I know fully, with full confidence over the last week, it hasn't proven out. I don't know. I wouldn't go huge on this. But listen, if you're gonna bet on this game, take the GOAT. And you got my man Kleiman, who I think is a great coach. So this will be a fun one to watch. And it could come down to 7.5 versus 7. That line keeps fluctuating, as you said. So this is going to be a fun game because everybody's playing, and that's rare.
For sure. Yeah. And that Kansas State team, tough to blow up. But we'll see with Alabama at full strength. We'll see if they can go out with a bang. Moving to our next one. And Mike, I mean, I don't know if you know who I'm gonna be siding with in this one.
I have no idea.
Man, we get to talk about Iowa football again. It's beautiful. The Music City Bowl. Iowa has moved up to a 3-point favorite now over Kentucky. That thing was at 2 as of last night. This morning I wake up, it's toggled up to 3. Mike, we also are monitoring history right now because the live total of this game is 31. That is a half point lower than the lowest point total in FBS history. A game I was at last month, Minnesota and Iowa. And by the way, that game went way under. It was a very bizarre game where I think 10 points were scored like in the first 6 or 7 minutes, but then the game finished 13-10. Like there was like almost no scoring after like the early second quarter. So it just sort of, then it returned to the game that we thought it was going to be. But this one is in noon kickoff in Nashville. Again, 31 point total with Iowa favored by 3. Get to some opt-outs and portal stuff and injuries. Both teams are way down the depth chart at quarterback. It looks like we're going to get – and Mike, when I kick it to you, I want your thoughts on both the quarterbacks that we think we're going to see because most people don't know these kids very well. But on the Iowa side, we're getting – I think it's pronounced Labas, Joey Labas, their third-string quarterback. On the Kentucky side, I think it's going to be Destin Wade. The backup they had earlier this year – Sharon something or other. He looked like he was a part of Harry Potter or something like that, in the cafeteria there. But anyhow, for some reason they're not playing him. I guess they want to, at least that's what some people have forwarded, that they're going to be starting this Wade kid instead. But other ones, and for Iowa, it's because Padilla, the backup, he's in the portal. Spencer Petras, the starter, he has a bad shoulder injury. He's out for like a whole calendar year. Then Iowa's running back Gavin Williams in the transfer portal. He's not going to play. A couple of Iowa's best receivers in a receiving corps that already wasn't very good have transferred out, Arlen Bruce and Keegan Johnson. And then let's see. The other ones are Laporta, Sam Laporta, the stud tight end. Looks like they're gonna Iowa's gonna get him. And that he's going to play. The one opt out they did have was Kayvon Merriweather, the star safety for Iowa. He's moving on to the NFL. But outside of that, Iowa's awesome defense, which is ranked number 1 SP plus, has the rest of their contributors. So Iowa's defense should be ready to roll. On the Kentucky side, Will Levis, who he's going to get way more attention as an NFL prospect than he was a good college quarterback. But he is opted out, which ostensibly leaves us to Destin Wade starting a quarterback for Kentucky. One potential thing to keep an eye on here on the Kentucky side is on the Iowa side, you'd figure that they're just going to run, especially because one thing I do know about that Labas kid, the third stringer, is he can move around a lot better than the top 2 guys. But on the Kentucky side, I'm not sure that they can do the same here because Chris Rodriguez opts out, the starter. Cavassier Smoke, one of the top backups, he's in the transfer portal. And then Ramon Jefferson, a guy that they had gotten in the transfer portal before the season. Some thought that he was going to be like the 1B to Rodriguez when he came back and maybe even start when Rodriguez was suspended the first month of the season. Jefferson tore his knee in August, and so he's out. So Kentucky's all the way down to their 4th-string running back, and Iowa's run defense is real good. Kentucky also has we're monitoring injury on Tavion Robinson, one of their receivers. They have numerous other backup receivers that are in the portal. And then they had an opt-out with one of their starting cornerbacks, and this kid named Carrington Valentine. Mike, with all that said, who do you like in this one?
Well, first of all, I mean, if that number stays at 31, I have to take the over. I mean, it's just so low. I know Iowa's defense is great. I know Kentucky's offense stinks. I know we're down to 3rd-string quarterbacks on each side. But 31 is just an unbelievably – I know. And you know what? In the Minnesota-Iowa game, what did we both say? We said take the under. And we said take the under with confidence because we felt it was honestly going to be like 10 points below. But 31, man, I can't legitimately wager an under at 31 because a turnover here or there, a short field here or there, just it ends it immediately. If that's a 10-7 game going into the half, I'm dead, I think. But to the sides, I do like Kentucky here, and I know you're going to disagree. Now, I like Iowa's defense. Don't get me wrong. I don't like Labas. Not as a person, but as a quarterback. I mean, he's just not ready. I think you're going to see a tall, gangly kid without a lot of arm strength. I think he's going to make some mistakes. In high school, I think if I remember correctly, was an Under Armour All-American in a very odd year. It was one of those situations where it was, why is he here? He's a mid 3-star kid. He had some nice offers, but not a great player. Now, as far as Destin Wade, he's a big athlete. I mean, he's an athletic kid. We didn't know whether he was going to be a quarterback or whether he would move to play defense, play offense. I think he's going to be trouble a little bit because he can move and he's hard to bring down. And a lot of people haven't seen him, so it's hard to game plan against a kid like this. He's a 4-star kid out of high school, very, very talented football player. Kentucky is a run-first team, as we know. As you mentioned, they're down to like their 6th-string running back. But they're going to put in a lot of run-first packages for Wade. I think they're going to be able to move the football that way. And I think they're going to cover this spread. So I just – I know you're going to take Iowa, and that's fine. I don't know. I just feel Kentucky's going to cover this one, especially, if you're giving me a field goal in a rock fight, horrible football game.
Yeah, so my hat's probably giving away which way I'm going in this one,
bit.
But or my mug. But that to start out with the total handicap, because 31. We've never seen lower. And by the way, by the time this thing gets to kickoff, it might even be lower. I actually thought this one had a shot to be the first ever game with the win or with a point total in the 20s. It doesn't look like it's going to get there unless there is a tsunami of money on the under before kickoff. But it's probably going to be in the 31 thing, at least right now. But Kentucky and Iowa both have top 6 SP plus defenses overall in the nation. So we're talking 2 nasty defenses. Both of them are top 13 in tackle success rate. So they're both reliable as well. Both offenses rank outside the SP plus top 90. So they're both bottom 30 offenses in the nation, or bottom 40, I suppose. Kentucky plays at the slowest offensive pace in the entire nation, 131 out of 131. Iowa is 112 in that. So it's not only going to be sort of a paint dry game as far as the offensive plays, it's that the clock will run down to, 5 on the play clock before the next snap. And then the other thing is both the offenses lost more to opt-outs than the defenses did, right? Like Kentucky and Iowa each lost one starter in their secondary, but more or less their defenses are intact outside of that. So, I mean, they're pretty close qualitatively to the group that for Iowa was number 1, SP plus, and for Kentucky that was number 6. But these teams with their crappy offenses, they're going to be even worse now that you're down to your third string quarterbacks.
You might not. Listen, you might get an upgrade. I mean, Spencer Petras stinks and Will Levis stinks. How do we know these guys third down on the depth chart might not provide a spark for this football team? Those guys stink. So how could you get worse than them? That's go ahead. That's part of my argument.
Well, I was one thing I'm excited about with that Labas kid, because I was reading through all the different quotes. I read some of the scouting reports. I probably came across yours too, just trying to deep dive them a little bit. But because obviously we hadn't seen much of them in game action yet. But one thing I like about it is he can move way, way, way better than Petras. Like a part of the issue with Petras was you're playing behind a crappy offensive line. You don't have any receivers. Nobody is afraid of your run game. And you're not good, but you're also lead-footed, right? And so he was just a sitting duck back there a lot. This Labas kid, what I hope that they have done is made a game plan around essentially just running to both sides, using the quarterback's legs as well. Let's just chip away at this thing. They should just take Jerry Kill's playbook from New Mexico State. They were using your boy Diego Pavia all year like that, like just sort of nicking away at the yards they needed to move the sticks. That's what I want to see from Iowa in this game. Apparently the Hawkeye staff, they think he's okay with the short and intermediate throws, but to Mike's point, there are no illusions about that kid's arm, like that it's not strong. Like, I mean, the coaches will just outright say that. So Kentucky can play a little bit in, but I mean, there could be there's at least a path to some level of offensive efficiency for Iowa. Maybe when I flip the field to the other side with Kentucky, here's where it sort of loses me is with Iowa, you can keep control of the ball and take care of it by keeping the ball on the ground mostly. And I mean, Iowa's fine punting as well. They don't care. Kentucky, they can't just sort of skew all the way to the run game. I don't think here, because you're down to that 4-string running back and you're going up against a top 5 national run defense. But then it's like, well, are they gonna try to throw more with this Destin Wade kid? Iowa's pass defense is top 3 in the nation. So it's just like, and Kentucky obviously was very run heavy during the season. Are they now going to try to go the other way? That stuff I'm not sure, just because of how thin they are in the running back room. But one other thing to keep an eye on in this game, for what is obviously going to be a very low scoring game, very close game. Number one, Iowa very comfortable in these games. I suppose you could argue that Kentucky is too, but Mike, because that's all they played in. But Iowa, they have sort of a trump card weapon in games like this, in that they have a top 5 SP plus special teams unit just overall, but they also have a weapon in their punter, Tory Taylor. It's the reason why on TV, and you'll probably see some of these Iowa fans today when they show them on TV, but they'll have things like our punter is our best player, or Tory Taylor for Heisman, or different stuff like that. We celebrate that punter. Because of Tory Taylor, Iowa should be winning the field position battle the whole game. I'm taking Iowa, and I'm taking the under.
All right, so and I wrote this in October of 2020, so you'll like this, actually.
Yeah.
I would now remember, this was quarantine. I was probably a little stir crazy, but in one of the sleeper commits in the Big Ten, Joey Labas. And the reason I said it at the time, again, arm strength's not there, but accuracy, a little moxie. This kid was committed to Ball State. He's a MAC kid. Usually those kids that go to the MAC that are overlooked, they end up putting up surprising careers. And I felt at the time, I didn't know Brian Ferentz was so horrible. I felt he would be a good fit for what they do offensively, because, you can't rely on this kid to win football games, but he's probably not going to lose you football games. So that'll give you a little hope. But I don't trust Brian Ferentz. I don't trust Iowa. They're going to have to rely on the defense. I think we're going to see, Destin Wade's athleticism And a lot of people are maybe going to be surprised. So, we're going to disagree on this one again, which is probably great too. Because again, if we agree, sometimes it just doesn't work out. So this will be one to watch. I'm taking the opposite of you completely, Kentucky. I'm getting the points, and I'm going to take the over. And if you give me a botched, snap on a punt or a blocked punt or a short field, you give me 10-7 going into the half, I'm feeling good about the over.
We got a double disagreement on one game.
Double.
This might be a first for us.
Yeah, and I don't feel good about it, honestly, because I don't, 31 is very low, but these teams both stink offensively. I'm thinking there's going to be a couple big turnovers that are going to lead to short fields and scores. And that's why I'm scared, man. If you bet a lot of money on a 31, and I know we did it in Minnesota, Iowa, but if you do it, you're just nervous the whole game. I don't want to be nervous.
If we were going to do it once, I'm happy it happened in the last episode of the season, and also on a game that's going to make history here with that point total. Guys, we wanted to take a brief break to thank our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook, and then we're going to get to your questions. So if you have any quick, type them into the chat. Betting pros and DraftKings Sportsbook are teaming up to bring you guys a wild offer this season. New customers can get a free $50 bet when making their first-time deposit. To get in on the action, just create your new DraftKings Sportsbook account using the promo code CFBPros. Make a minimum deposit of $5 or more, and then use your free $50 bet on all the college football action, on the playoff action today, as it were. Again, to claim this offer, go to the link in our video description or pinned in the live chat and sign up to get started. All right, Michael, we have a few questions. First one comes from our buddy Mike Huseman. He says, I expect Iowa in a lot of 2 TE sets. Do we have prop bets or thoughts on Luke Lachey, Nick's brother? Mike, no, just kidding.
Am I gonna start singing boy bands? I mean, I'll do it.
I'm happy you got that one. I'm impressed with that one.
Well, listen, I'm old. First of all, how are you going to find props on that? There's no props I can find for this game. Maybe you can find them, but everything's sort of taken away. There's no quarterback props. There's very few rushing, receiving props. Not a lot of props out there.
Yeah. So one of my books is not offering it at all, and the other one, as of when we were right before the show, it didn't have anything up. But then I'm pulling it up now, and they've tossed up a couple. So for the receiving props for this game, they only offer one Kentucky guy, Barry and Brown, who they have at 46.5. Then they have Laporta for Iowa at 47.5. That's it. That's all they're offering. And then they're not offering any quarterback ones. I guess because the sports books also aren't sure who's going to start specifically on Kentucky. And then we do not have any rushing ones either.
No, so there's anytime touchdown scorers on DraftKings, which is I love. They should do this more for regular season games, but for bowl games, just like NFL, you can always do first time touchdown scorer anytime with high plus odds. They don't do that for regular season games, so I would love to see that more. They have it for this. No, they're very limited as far as who. Lachey's not one of them. I'll tell you that much. You can get a plus 225 for Destin Wade. And that's obviously not a passing touchdown, and 175 for Sam Laporta. But there's nothing on Lachey. They dumbed down the props on this quite a bit. Yeah, and they have to. I mean, this game is just.
Mike, don't shoot any strays towards Kentucky, Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
This historical game.
Well, this is a game. Like you said, this is a game Iowa's comfortable in. Well, this is comfortable sitting in your own mess. It's just gross, and it's like the Briar Patch story. Oh my God, don't throw me in a Briar Patch. This is where Iowa wants to live, but low key, this is where Kentucky likes to live too, because Will Levis was supposed to be good. He was okay under Liam Cohen. They got a new offensive coordinator this season. They've been horrible, and all they did was run. So both the teams are comfortable in this garbage game. But come on, it's a bowl game. I have to assume you're going to see a little bit of trickeration. You're going to see a couple fluke touchdowns. That's my guess. So, but no props. Sorry, Mike. That was a good question. No props on that.
Okay, well, this is one hilarious thing. So apparently Laporta is the Hawkeyes emergency quarterback today. I'm just seeing that.
Hey, can't go worse.
So that could be fun. I think it's tough because with the Laporta one, because with the quarter, Labas or whatever, but 47.5, that's a very reasonable number. Laporta, his receiving this year, we'll just go back we'll go back to like late September. So the last game against Minnesota, because he didn't play in the last one, or was it one or two, the last game, because him and Potty Bomb were injured, but Laporta coming back for this one. But against Minnesota, and by the way, Laporta got knocked out very early in this game. He still had 4 catches for 95 yards. Week before against Wisconsin, 5 for 48. Week before against Purdue, 3 for 71 yards and a touchdown. Week before against Northwestern, 5 for 53. Week before against Ohio State, 6 for 55. Week before against Illinois, 9 for 101. Against Michigan the week before that, it was just 5 for 24. But then the week before that against Rutgers, 4 for 77. So he's pretty reliable to go over that. We know he's going to play. It's just, can that Labas kid get him the ball? But Iowa's receiving court, like we talked about, it's decimated with opt-outs. They're way down, and the receiving core already stunk. So they're going to throw it to Laporta when they're putting it up.
Right.
I'm going over. I talk myself.
We'll see if he could reach him, with arm. Potty Bomb is a great name, and that's exactly what this game is. It's a potty bomb. So let's move off of it. And
how dare you?
It's horrible. It's a horrible game.
Okay. This question is from Mark Certain Sion.
I feel bad for Mark.
Is this in there right? He said,
"Good morning, Mark. Mark, I'm sorry."
Good morning, guys. I've appreciated the analysis all bowl season long. I'm glad I didn't bet my entire mortgage, only half, on Florida State. Yeah, I guess you'll have to move out of half the house. I kind of was feeling that way too. I was about to jump off my deck with some of those drop bombs that Florida State had. I mean, at least they came and won it at the end, because I had their money line at several
the worst
parlays,
but the worst thing that could happen was that they didn't cover, because I lost quite a bit on that. They didn't cover. And secondly, they won the game. So not only did I not reap the benefits of Florida State, which they should have covered this game with all the drops, but then I had to hear the Florida State fans in my mentions again all over. I said, Norvell wouldn't win 6 games this season, and now he's won 10, and all these jerks come out of the woodwork. It's, we beat Oklahoma. Yeah, well, you know what? Oklahoma stinks. You won by 3. Don't brag about it. They had a billion opt-outs. You had none. You should have beaten them by 30. So whatever. You flex all you want. It's like Tyler Buckner flexing on Twitter last night. Did you see that?
I didn't. No.
He put up a video, talking about how call an ambulance, but not for me. And some guy pulled out a gun. Yeah. Whatever, dude. Like, you threw 2 pick sixes. Shut up. Stop talking. And Florida State fans, you should have won that game by 20. So whatever. You're lucky you won.
You're fired up today, Mike.
I am a little angry.
I like it.
I am a little angry.
I like when we get feisty, Farrell. And now we're hopping into the playoff game, so we need feisty Farrell for this.
This is what I like. This is what I want to talk about.
So we got a 4 p.m. Eastern kickoff in this one. The first semifinal, we're going to talk about the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona. Michigan, live in the market right now, is a 7.5-point favorite over TCU. We got a total on this game. It looks like around 58 right now. We'll hit the opt-outs, and obviously you don't have any opt-outs in the playoff ones, but as far as injuries and stuff like that, TCU full strength. Like they have a couple minor things, but they're not contributors to their team. With Michigan, they had a longer laundry list, but not a lot of. The one big one is Blake.
Big one. Yep.
Blake Corum. But it's mitigated a bit, isn't it, by the way that Donovan Edwards played in those last 2 games. Donovan Edwards lit up Ohio State, of course, in Columbus. And then he lit up Purdue in the last one. So we'll see if Donovan Edwards can keep it going, but you do have to mention that. But Eric All had been injured earlier in the season, and he obviously didn't want to come back. He transferred to Iowa, as did Cade McNamara, but obviously McNamara wasn't playing either, and McNamara had a season-ending injury too. The only guys we got a status check, I think, are the 2 edges on Michigan, Mark Morris and Oki. Maisie Smith looks like he's going to be fine. The defensive tackle, he'd had a gun charge or whatever that they were going to go in and look at or whatever. But the university was pretty confident that, and he was confident that it was going to get thrown out for a variety of reasons that I won't get into right now. Mike, with all that being said,
Yeah.
who do you like? Who do you like in this tilt?
Well, so I've picked against TCU much of the season, and they came roaring from behind. What, 5 of their games they were down more than 10 points, and I think you might see Michigan get out to a lead here. But I like TCU. I'm not going to bet them against them again, especially if you're giving me that hook. I mean, you're giving me 7.5. I just think they're a team on a mission. I think they're a team that plays for their coach, that plays for their quarterback. I think that I'm not sure if they're going to win this football game, but I think this is a evenly matched contest, especially with Blake Corum out. Now, I know Donovan Edwards went crazy the last couple of games, and he's a tremendous talent. I mean, he was nearly a 5-star kid coming out of high school, but Corum is that reliable guy. Like Donovan Edwards is a home run hitter. Corum's the guy that's going to get you 4. He's going to get you 6. He's going to get you 5. He's going to get you 8. Then he's going to bust one for 20. He's going to keep the chains moving. He's going to wear down the defense. And if they bottle up Edwards and they force J.J. McCarthy to throw, he can do that, but he's also been inaccurate this year, made some dumb plays, and hasn't seen the field as well as I wanted him to. And I think that's going to be the strategy. Come in here, load the box, stop the run, make Harbaugh and that offense of his uncomfortable, which means throwing the football. I think Michigan could get out to a lead. I think TCU will come back. I think this will be an even football game, and then it'll come down to who makes a play. And what I saw from Max Duggan in the Big 12 championship game is a kid who's not to be denied. And I'm going to go with that kid to maybe not win, but certainly cover the 7.5. And we'll get to a couple props in a second. But what do you got?
Yeah, and Dugan, to your point, should mention that last game, you remember at the end of it, he was badly banged up.
Oh, yeah.
And now that he's had, how long has it been, Mike?
Like 3 weeks?
Yeah, something like that. He should be healthier. Yeah, he didn't have a serious injury. It's just he'd been banged up and everything. That actually brings me to one of the points that I was going to hit, which is Michigan. Obviously, they have not played a very good schedule this year, but they also haven't seen a couple different things that TCU is going to throw at them. Number one, the legs of a guy like Dugan. Michigan's run defense is real good. It was real good all year. It should be able to at least address Kendre Miller and prevent him from going nuts or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see how many yards Dugan can carve out. Be it on scrambles, that weren't designed, or be it on designed runs. I think that's going to be one interesting thing to watch on that side of the ball. Michigan's their run defense, I think it's top 3 in the nation, top 2 probably. So you would give it a slight advantage, but you do have to give the caveat TCU's rushing offense is top 20 as well. And again, how is Michigan going to do against the legs of a dual threat like Dugan who runs so hard? We just haven't gotten to see that yet. Michigan's pass defense is very good as well. And you would give that Michigan's pass defense a bit of an advantage over TCU's passing offense as well. But you've got to drop another caveat there because TCU has a potential top 15 pick on the boundary in Quentin Johnston, and nobody can cover that guy one-on-one. So this is one of the things that I'll be looking for at the beginning of the game is how does Michigan intend to address Quentin Johnston? Are you going to do the thing that they do to Justin Jefferson where you get the deep safety help every single time? If not, just literally 2 guys going to him like right away or around the goal line 3. Is Michigan going to delineate that many resources to Quentin Johnston? You could do that, take them away, but now you're playing 9 on 10 the rest of the field where this TCU team, they're happy to take the numbers advantage on any given play. It's why like when Sonny Dykes came in, everyone's talking about air raid. They're going to throw for 1 billion yards. Their passing attack was good, but it was their running game that made them really dangerous. That was the really, really good thing that they could do. And then once you started getting terrified about that, now you had the stud Johnson, that Darius Davis kid is a speed merchant. And they go 4 or 5 deep at receiver. So they can spread you out and they can bring in waves of guys. So again, it'll be interesting to see the Johnson thing and then how TCU does with that. Flipping the field to the other side, what I'm confident in is that TCU will be able to greatly slow down J.J. McCarthy from what we've seen these past couple games. TCU's secondary is pretty dang good, and they do that 3-3-5 and they can drop bodies back and flood the coverages, whatever. Those downfield looks that McCarthy had these past couple of games, they're not going to be there. And one other thing to monitor specific to that is JJ McCarthy. Like, you look at his interception number, just total turnovers, whatever. Sterling, in comparison to like the touchdowns and the yards, whatever. You start looking at some of the other stuff like his PFF, turnover worthy plays, stuff like that. It's elevated above what the expectation of what his turnovers would be. Is this going to be a game where we get some regression? TCU's defense, Mike, as you know, was extremely opportunistic this year, sort of a ball hawking type secondary as well. So if JJ McCarthy sort of comes in feeling himself and he wants to rip some down the seam or take a couple deep shots early, it'll be interesting to see if he's not, totally, on the game to start right away, if TCU can flip the field on him a little bit. And then the probably the biggest matchup of the entire game, it's that Michigan run offense against the TCU run defense. If Michigan can just stampede them, the rest of this stuff I'm talking about really don't matter a whole lot. Because if TCU cannot stop Michigan from running whatsoever, like if this is Michigan, Ohio State all over again, where every single time you take a sip of beer, you look up Donovan Edwards running in the open field again. If this is a redo of that, Michigan covering this number, they're gonna roll TCU. It doesn't matter what TCU does; they won't have the fire. Well, they won't be able to keep up on the scoreboard or whatever. But with the TCU run defense, it's really interesting because it finished middle of the pack this year in the FBS overall. But it's really interesting how they got there. They were not middle of the pack every game. They had games where they were awful and got gouged. The last 3 games specifically, they gave up 200 yards or more rushing each one of them. But then there was also games where TCU's run defense was awesome. Texas would be a great example of this. TCU shut out the lights on Bijan Robinson and Roschon better than almost anybody this year. Those guys combined for 43 yards on 17 carries. And then at that point, Texas couldn't do nothing. They were just like, okay, they just had a hard time moving the ball whatsoever. So the variance of it, TCU, again, they run that 3-3-5 and they don't have a lot of beef up front, but they do a lot of stunts. They do some blitzing. They just different stuff like that. Is that going to be able to work here against a Michigan offensive line that conservatively is top 5 in the nation? You could certainly argue it's even the best. That, you could actually have that argument. So can Michigan contend with that sort of thing? You would think so. Going to open up the run lanes. We'll see when he gets, if Edwards breaks into that second level, will the TCU secondary be able to help out, stuff like that? But all this said, all this stuff tossed in, I'm going to take the points with TCU. It's a team that we've seen playing a series of close games that were low scoring. We've seen them win the shootouts. They can go both different ways. And then the one game they lost against Kansas State, ironically, who we were just talking about, that game went into overtime, was a very close game as well. And TCU play is sort of diametrically opposed to Michigan. And someone out there could be like, well, so did Ohio State, so why are you saying that? Well, Ohio State didn't have the ability to run the TCU did, right? Like, because their running back room was so shot at the end, and still is now. TCU is going to be able to run at least a little bit, and we'll see about the rest of it.
Well, some of these props are not good for TCU fans because they seem odd to me. The over-under rushing yards for Donovan Edwards, 128.5. That's way high.
Wow.
Way high. But somebody in Vegas knows something, so if that number is that high, that means there's a lot of expectations he's going to have a big game. Kendre Miller, on the other hand, I know Michigan has a very good, rush defense, but he's 74.5. That's low to me. I mean, this guy consistently churns out 100-yard games, and he's very hard to contain. And then the other one is Dugan, 24.5 rushing yards. Now, I know sacks come into play here for negative yardage in college football.
That feels low to me.
That's really low. It's very, very low. So somebody, whatever magical formula they're putting together for these props, somebody sees this Michigan offense overwhelming TCU, and they're set. As you mentioned, they're not very big and not overly physical up front. And somebody also sees this Michigan swarming defense really, really bottling up the running game. So that's not good for either of our picks because we're taking TCU. They're very curious numbers. Now, logically, I would take under 128.5 Donovan Edwards. The number's way too high. I would take above for Kendra Miller, 74.5, and I would take above for Dugan at 24.5. I would take all of those, but I don't like those numbers. They're very fishy.
The Dugan one, I think that could be. I don't want to say missing the books or missing the context, but I think it could be based on some false assumptions. I think what might be behind that is, number one, people just saw how gimpy he was at the end of the Big 12 title game. And then with Michigan, how good their rushing defense is. And Mike, as you know, like they're sort of extrapolating out like how many yards per game do they get, but then also how good is this run defense, et cetera. But one thing I would question on both sides of that is we think that Dugan is going to be basically 100% here, probably healthier than he was at the end of the season, seeing as though TCU, we haven't mentioned this yet, TCU had to play 11 straight games. TCU's bye week was on September 17th. They sort of got jobbed by themselves, but like putting the bye as early as it was. Then they had to play 11 straight weeks. This was a team that was badly nicked up with injuries. Dugan at the very end, but before that, it was a lot in the receiving room. Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, Kendra Miller missed a game, and then he came back. So they should be healthier there. I think that might be what it has to do with. And again, that Michigan run defense, yes, it's really, really good. No denying that. But they haven't faced a quarterback that can run this well when you have all the other threats around him. So I think I got to go over on that. If you look at Dugan, his the game logs going back a bit, had 110 rushing yards and a touchdown against Kansas State on 15 carries, even though he was physically compromised, it seemed like in the second half. He only had 3 rushing yards against Iowa State, but they were not going to put him in harm's way in that game, especially because it became a laugher so early. Week before that against Baylor, he had 50 rushing yards and a touchdown. Week before that against Texas, because of sack yardage. And I guess that would be the concern
That's
here.
the thing. That's the sack yardage is what I think they're really honing in on the sack yardage, honestly.
Against Texas, Max Dugan had negative 41 rushing.
He's been sacked 23 times this year, which isn't an insane amount. But if you get sacked 4 times in this game, then his numbers are going to be quite down. So I think he was more worn out than hurt. At the end of that game in the Big 12 championship, I don't think he was injured. I think he was just exhausted and beat up. And so now he's had a chance to rest. So, yeah, it's a tough line. I mean, 24.5. The quarterback props for rushing have been good to us this season. I won a ton of money on Jaden Daniels week after week after week. Bo Nix week after week after week. This one's just low. So I think he's going to, things break down. He's a first, second read guy, and then he's gone. And I think that's going to, be I think he's going to hit over that. So the sacks are what you're talking about here for sure.
Yeah, and this it's certainly not my most confident bet of the week, whatever. But I'm taking the over on the Dugan rushing for the reasons that I stated. So I was just seeing, Mike. What was the number you were seeing over there?
Oh, it was 24.5.
Okay,
I'm low.
I'm seeing 25.5, but we're going over.
Changes. But 24.5, 25.5, I'd still take the over.
Alrighty, moving on to our next
Ohio State, Georgia.
Yeah, moving on to our next playoff game. We have a live line on this one of Georgia at -6 right now. Maybe I should even check live, Mike. Is that still 6? Because that's another one where it was coming down. It was at 6.5 yesterday. Okay. Yeah. So it was Georgia -6.5 for the longest time. I mean, that line probably remained more static than dang near any other bowl line because it was just Georgia 6.5 all the way through. But then as of, it was like yesterday, maybe even last night, it came down to 6. So I was curious to see, would there be a shot it would get to 5.5? Because that's where, spoiler alert, where I'd be looking to add on Georgia potentially. But we'll talk about the injury news here quick on both sides. Obviously, no real opt-outs, but with Ohio State, you're always talking about that running back room, which has had a hex on it all season long.
Mm-hmm.
Travion Henderson, the guy who came into this year, this guy could win the Heisman. We'll see. But he's out for this game and for the whole playoffs. They shut him down. He'd been trying to play through those injuries, but missed 3 of the last 4 regular season games because of he had a fracture and torn ligament in his foot, which he'd been playing through since September. So you can't really blame him for opting for surgery eventually. Mayan Williams looks like he is going to play. Ryan Day was saying, and Mayan Williams had come back and played in that finale against Michigan. But Mayan Williams, you do have to say he'd been banged up throughout the season, and then is like the luck for this room just couldn't get any worse. Mayan Williams comes down with like the flu or something, like over the past like week or week plus or whatever. So I mean, Day was coming out and he was. I guess they were calling it a stomach bug, whatever that means. But in over the past week. But anyhow, Day says that he's going to play, but you'll have to monitor how that goes. Obviously, Evan Pryor, their third string running back, he's been out all season because he tore his knee up in camp or whatever. Then also Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we have barely seen this season, certainly haven't seen him since September. He not playing. He shut it down and opted out. And then their starting guard, Matt Jones, who missed the Michigan game with an injury. We're not sure if he's going to come back, questionable or whatever. So we'll see if he ends up going. So that's the Ohio State side. On the Georgia side, Ladd McConkey had left the SEC title game with a knee injury, but looks like he's going to play. Eric Gilbert, who hadn't been playing much, disappointed at Georgia. He's bounced out the door. We'll see where he ends up. Outside of that, Nolan Smith would be the big one. He was their best, Georgia's best pass rusher, but a month and a half ago or so, or maybe even a little bit longer, he suffered a pectoral tear against Florida, and he's out for the season. They have had time to, acclimate to that or whatever. But anyhow, that looks like all we got, Mike. What are your thoughts on this one? Which side do you like?
Okay. Well, I still think it's, I don't know. I think it's a game time decision for Ladd McConkey. Honestly, I'm not really sure if he's going to play or not. I hear different things. Okay. Kirby Smart says he's hopeful McConkey's going to play, and then I hear some things, from sources that don't want to be named that he might not play. So, and that's a big deal. But to me, this comes down to the program and the direction the program's in and how you respond when you get punched in the face. And I think Ohio State's soft. I really do. I think Michigan punched them in the face, and they just whimpered and hid in the corner. I don't think they deal well with physical football teams, and they're going to knock them around a bit. I know they're, a very glorified offense. I know they're a dangerous offense. I know C.J. Stroud is, first round pick and all that stuff, but he's also a guy who's extremely uncomfortable under duress. And he's also a guy, if his first read's not there, he struggles with read number 2. Georgia's defense is excellent. They're a team on a mission. They still play as underdogs, even though they're a national championship team and they're undefeated. Stetson Bennett still has this mentality that everybody thinks he sucks. They're the hungrier football team. So I look at it this way. Could Ohio State blow out Georgia? I don't believe that's possible. Could Georgia blow out Ohio State? Yes. So I'm going to say take Georgia, lay the line, 6, even if it gets down, whatever, 5.5. Even if it gets up to 6.5, 7. I like Georgia here. I want that line to continue to go down because I think Georgia is going to physically manhandle Ohio State and win this by double digits.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. This is a bad matchup for Ohio State. Obviously, you saw what happened when they played Michigan. Ohio State had not played many good opponents before that. Notre Dame, who's like a discount version of both, like a Kirkland brand version of what these two teams do. Ohio State even kind of struggled with them, right? It was 21-10 in that one. And then they got their doors blown out by Michigan. They haven't really played too many other teams outside of that, quality opponents. Georgia's just the best version of this, right? They're the furthest thing down the evolution line of it. Getting into the handicap, Georgia has the best run defense in the nation. I mentioned Michigan was number 2. It's because Georgia number 1. Ohio State ain't going to be able to run here. We just mentioned how bad the Ohio State running back room has gotten because of the health stuff. Georgia's going to shut the lights out on that. So it's all going to come down to C.J. Stroud throwing. Now with Smith and Jigba out, you're down to 2 receivers, right? Now they're studs in Harrison Jr. and Egbuka. But outside of that, everyone, like that Julian Fleming kid was a disappointment. And beyond that, they don't have many other guys that they trust. No other Ohio State pass catcher outside of Harrison and Egbuka has more than 35 catches, and only 2 of them have 10 or more. So you're really isolating the usage to those 2 guys in particular in this game. Because again, I don't think it's viable for Ohio State to run the ball here. So, I mean, can Georgia slow down those 2 guys? It's basically what it comes down to. Georgia has an awesome nickel corner in this kid named Javon Bullard. He's been awesome this year. Of all FBS quarterbacks who played 280 or more coverage snaps this year, Bullard was number 17 in coverage grade. He gave up only 187 receiving yards on 45 targets. And he's also a very good tackler, which I think needs to be mentioned because obviously Ohio State, they're looking to hit guys in the hands in space. And if they break one tackle or they get one step on you, they can take it to the house real quick. Egbuka can take it to the house. But I'm not sure that Egbuka is going to clown Bullard in this matchup. And then on the other with the other one with Harrison, it's going to be Ringo against them. Ringo's been a little bit up and down for things that are outside of coverage this year. His coverage has been pretty solid. His missed tackle rate like doubled this year, and I think he took about double the penalties. But just as far as just the nuts and bolts of coverage, he was very good once again. I think both of his active seasons, it was in both of them he allowed a 66.0 or less opposing NFL passer rating, on his targets, whatever. And he's the number 5 cornerback on Mel Kiper's 2023 draft list or whatever for whatever that's worth. What's interesting about that matchup is Harrison is obviously, he's athletic, he's fluid, he has the body control, very, very, very skilled, but in a 6'3" package, right? Like, so he also presents a physical mismatch for some of these corners he's gone against. Ringo is your prototypical long outside boundary NFL corner, 6'2", 210. He's as stout as they come out there, and he's going to get in Harrison's face. So, Ohio State cannot afford for Marvin Harrison not to win that matchup, and they need him to win it kind of soundly. And we'll see. But the rest of the Georgia secondary is very good beyond that. Both the safeties are good. The second cornerback on the other side is really good. He ain't going to have any problem with Julian Fleming whatsoever. And then I think, when you flip the field to the Georgia offense against the Ohio State defense, Ohio State's defense is really weird in that they basically have 5 standout starters, and the rest of the other 6 guys are just guys this year. Ohio State's their defense is good up the middle, and they do have 2 good edge guys, but the secondary I don't trust as far as I can throw it, forgive the pun. JJ McCarthy, you saw when they faced a legitimate quarterback, he was just shredding them in a way we hadn't seen JJ McCarthy shred people up until that point. I think Stetson Bennett, who, we make fun of Stetson Bennett and stuff like that, but he does have several things going for him. Obviously, you don't look like much, but he's top 20 in the nation in adjusted accuracy. Stetson Bennett is lowest rate of turnover-worthy plays. He's in the top 20 of quickest average time to throw on dropbacks. That's going to neuter the Ohio State pass rush. And top 20 in lowest percentage of pressures turned into sacks. So even if that pass rush does get through, Stetson Bennett's very good at making the first guy miss, extending plays, and getting the ball out on the money. The one interesting thing here will be Ohio State. They've been you can nick them for the long stuff. Georgia's passing offense has been super duper efficient this year. And obviously, again, they asked Stetson Bennett to get the ball out fast, and then they're looking for yak opportunities. Those could be here. A couple of those long Michigan touchdowns against Ohio State were on, either just blown coverages, and then you saw a lot of galloping, or one missed tackle, and then the guy was behind there, whatever. Some of that stuff could be there, but it'll also be interesting to see if Georgia will throw down the field just a little bit more here, keep Stetson Bennett in the pocket just a little bit longer to try to take advantage of the poor safety play and the poor boundary cornerback play on Ohio State. You add all this stuff up. Again, I just think Georgia's a better version of Michigan. And we already seen what happened there. Mike, because I was talking about this all fall. I think this Ohio State team is an imposter. I don't like what I saw of them, like, on the field. And I also don't like sort of the vibe of the team. It was just different than these Ohio State teams that we've seen in the past. And they sort of were able to luck out by playing a really crappy schedule. In fact, Buckeyes only played 2 top 25 SP plus teams, They beat Penn State by 13, and obviously they got the hammer dropped on them against Michigan. Kirby Smart and Georgia, they're battle tested as all get out. They played 6 top 25 SP Plus teams. They beat Georgia, beat all 6 of them by double digits. They beat 5 of the 6 of them by 14 or more, 4 of the 6 of them by 20 or more, and 2 of the 6 of them by 41 or more. I'm laying the points with Georgia here. I think Georgia wins this game by double digits.
Yep, agree.
Moving on, and guys, in the audience, we'll take your questions here in just a sec. So if you have any, write them in the chat quick, and we'll get to them in just one second. But first, I wanted to tell you guys about a giveaway that we're doing that's really cool. If you want a chance to win a signed Isaiah McKenzie Buffalo Bills mini helmet, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel right now. Comment on this video, and that's it. So comment down here. We will be announcing a winner right here on this channel. So make sure to turn on your notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. And Mike and I always encourage that your comment is just complimenting Mike and I. That qualifies.
Well, why not? I mean, you could say we suck too. I don't care.
I suppose that would qualify too, but
just qualify, Yeah. But yeah, I still don't have a Bills helmet. I'm not eligible. But someone will get it.
So hopping into some questions. This one comes from Mark. He said, thoughts on the under 58 game total. Which one was?
I think he's talking about Georgia, Ohio State. I assume.
Well,
isn't it 56?
I think he's talking about Michigan TCU. That was the one with the 58. At least from what I can
you're right.
see.
You're right. It's 58. Yeah.
Mark, I would shade a little over on that. My system's total is 62. I'm not uber confident in it because I think there's a couple different ways that game script could go. But TCU, I'm pretty confident that they're going to scratch out some points here. The explosive plays have been there for them all season long. The efficiency is where it can sometimes go wayward. Michigan is going to force them into punts. We'll see on how many drives, but there are going to be quick strike touchdowns for TCU, and they're going to get a couple long runs as well. The Dugan rushing will inform how viable they can be overall, but I do think both these teams are going to be able to move the ball a bit, and so I would shade it over that 58. Mike, what's your take on that one?
I'd take the under. I think it's going to be sort of a physical, pounded out Michigan type of football game. I think TCU covers this game, but I could see certainly I don't know, like a 24-20 type of game. So I would take the under, but it's a tough call. It really depends on everything we just spoke about. So, but to me, the under, to you, the over.
The next question is, this one comes from HN World. He said, hey guys, I like CJ Stroud over 1.5 rushing yards versus Georgia. Your thoughts? Michael, your thoughts?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I didn't either. I've not
Well,
seen
I couldn't
that number.
find them on 1.5 rushing yards, but I wouldn't take that in a million years because we just spoke about how they're going to, they're not going to be able to run the ball effectively. Georgia's going to tee off. They're going to pass rush. And they're going to sack Stroud maybe 5 or 6 times, and that's going to keep that. He's going to be in negative rushing numbers. That's my take.
Yeah, Stroud this year has 74 rushing yards. Interestingly, he had 79 against Northwestern. So you can do the math on how he did in the rest of the games as far as that goes. He doesn't leave the pocket much. Obviously, he's trying to win from the pocket. What's interesting is Georgia, they don't, Mike, as you know, they don't blitz much, right? Like they do stay home. But in conjunction, they keep gap integrity. So it's not like, CJ Stroud, he ain't looking to run anyway, but Georgia's not going to like sort of facilitate for him like a free galloping and whatever. No. I am interested to see if Georgia turns up the heat just a little above what we're sort of accustomed to from them, because we've seen this over and over again. It's one reason, by the way, spoiler alert to the spring, that I'm going to be a little bit lower on CJ Stroud than some others, because when he gets heat in his face, all of a sudden the decision making starts to get a little bit wonky. The accuracy plummets. So we'll see if Georgia, is inclined to do that. But yeah, that one, man, that I can't go over.
I don't like it. I can't. Too many sacks. Too many potential sacks out there.
We're staying away. Then we got a question: Marvin Harrison Jr. TD or Brock Bowers TD? Let me see what the odds get. Mike, you got thoughts on those guys?
So over
See if I
Over
got
one
any time.
touchdown or 0.5 touchdowns of Brock Bowers is a plus 100. Marvin Harris is a minus 115. You've got the TD scorers, anytime score. Marvin Harris is minus 140. Brock Bowers minus 140 as well. You're not going to get positive numbers on much of this stuff. I don't know. They don't throw the ball to Brock Bowers that much in the red zone. They should throw it more. I wouldn't take Brock Bowers to score a touchdown. I think he's been, honestly, even though he's the best tight end in the country, all this other stuff, he's been a little bit disappointing this season from a statistical standpoint. So if I were to pick one of those, it would be Marvin Harrison Jr. to score.
I think I agree with Mike, even though, I'm on Georgia, but, like I was mentioning before, Ohio State literally needs to funnel all their offensive usage into two guys. It's Harrison and it's Egbuka. And the matchup, I think, is, I'm not going to say use the word advantageous, but I think the one for Egbuka, his matchup, I think it's just harder because of that Bullard kid in the slot for Georgia. Ringo, I'm not even going to say hit or miss because he's a very good corner, but he can be beat. And Stroud is going to be locking on to Harrison this entire game. And we know that Ohio State's going to score, so at least some. So I think I agree with that one. Our next question is from Mike. He asks us, do we have any props odds on a Stetson Bennett rushing touchdown? Let me check.
So Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, we do. Or I'm seeing one. Is this
what are you seeing? Because I know there's a anytime touchdown scorer for sure.
I'm seeing plus 150 for Stetson Bennett to score a touchdown.
I mean, here's what they do a lot of times. They've got a deep running back room. They get in the red zone. They'll, obviously he'll get an RPO situation or his own read situation, and he'll hold on to the ball and he'll rush, for a touchdown, an easy 2-yard scamper. They do that. I mean, I don't know how many touchdowns he has this season rushing, but it's enough that I've seen it where it's not a bad bet. I just would like that plus to be a little bit higher. I would like to get a 250 or something like that if I can on a quarterback rushing touchdown, if it's not an athletic quarterback who runs all the time. So I wouldn't really touch that at plus with 150. It's not enough for me.
Yeah, I would shy away from that too. And what I would target as far as props in that game, it would be the over on the passing for Georgia, because I think that Ohio State's pass defense stinks, and I think their secondary stinks. And so, like, whoever you think that they're Bennett's going to be targeting, but I'd go over on the Bennett passing yards.
Yeah, it's 275.5, which is pretty high.
Probably go over on that.
So
yeah,
we'll see.
And JJ McCarthy was able to fly over that.
That's true.
Then we got and Joe, thank you very much. He said, "Thanks, guys. You are awesome. We appreciate it."
See, that's what you have to do to enter to win the helmet.
There you go. He's now in. All right. Well, we got 25 minutes left, so we're gonna have to go a little bit speed round for January 2nd.
Fine by me, though. Those were the important ones. These are less
we had to chew into the playoff games a little bit more. So the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa Bay on January 2nd. This is a noon kickoff. The ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa, Florida. Mississippi State is a 1.5 favorite right now over Illinois. We have a total on this game of 46. And jumping into the opt-outs and injury stuff, Mississippi had a couple of transfers. Dylan Johnson, the kid who shares some of the touches with Marks in the backfield at running back, he's in there. Rara Thomas, who he had like 45 catches. But Mississippi State's receiving core is a little bit down. They do have depth, but he was one of their better receivers for sure. And then I hadn't seen an update on Colin Duncan, but they one of the starting safeties they have. But Mississippi State, two of their other guys in the secondary, Emmanuel Forbes, the lockdown outside corner, and Jackie Matthews, they both declared for the draft but said they were going to play. And Mississippi State, like basically everybody else, is playing. Obviously, they're playing in the wake of the Mike Leach tragedy. We don't know how that's going to manifest. Team turned it over. The program turned the keys over to Zach Arnett, who had been the defensive coordinator, very young head coach at this point, but they're mostly going to be at full strength from a personnel standpoint on the field. Illinois is not. Illinois had the opt-out of Chase Brown, their bell cow at running back. They had a Josh McCray, one of the two backups behind him, is going to play, it looks like. Before he had been questionable, he was upgraded to probable within the last couple of days. So the running game now, it's going to be Reggie Love and this Josh McCray kid. They might mix in a couple other guys, but those two guys at the top. Blocking tight end Luke Ford opted out. And then in the secondary, they got hit hard. Devin Witherspoon, just an absolute stud, is going to go in the first round of cornerback. He opted out. And then Sidney Brown, the twin brother of Chase, who's a super duper hard hitting safety. PJ Fleck actually comps him to Troy Polamalu. He has opted out as well. So Illinois definitely losing more. Mike, who do you like in this game with all that said?
So this comes down to emotion for me. Illinois is a good football team. They lost Ryan Walters to Purdue, and that's going to sort of upset the apple cart a little bit on defense. They just named a new secondary coach is going to be there as an analyst, and they promoted their defensive backs coach, Aaron Henry, to the defense coordinator. But it's a shakeup. Walters was very much loved there. The defense is what's been the I guess the glue for this team all season long, and offensively it's Chase Brown, and they don't have him. So, but that aside, Mike Leach is passing. Mississippi State players are going to be playing for him. This is going to matter as much as the national championship game to them. Illinois is 11-4 in their last 15 games against the spread, but it doesn't matter. Mississippi State's going to cover this football game, win this football game, and they're going to do it for Mike Leach. The emotion just overcomes everything else.
Yeah, and I think, once you start baking in all the opt-ins on both the sides, Mississippi State now, it seems like a pretty good value. Honestly, I was going to be on Illinois, and if I'm being really honest, I had bought an Illinois ticket earlier in the bowl season when we still didn't know about all the opt-outs. But then all of a sudden, all the Mississippi State kids, you had multiple declarees, but then they said that they were going to play, Forbes being one of the huge ones. But on the Illinois side, the same sorts of guys that were, you're wondering about, a lot of them, the key ones, they're gone. Both the Browns, Witherspoon, etc. That really compromises Illinois. I thought they had a pretty solid shot here because Illinois, you could argue that they had the best starting secondary in the nation at full strength. Like 4 guys that are legitimate NFL players that could be taken in the first 2 days. Now, when you lose the multiple guys back there, you have to bring new guys in. They have an injury to a backup corner behind them. It'll be interesting to see how the depth is there too. My adjusted line on this game, when you bake all that stuff in, is Mississippi State minus 5.9. So I'm showing a lot of value on Mississippi State with all this stuff. Obviously, they got the air raid, and Will Rogers has been playing pretty good. The receiving core is down a little bit, but now you're facing what is this decimated Illinois secondary. I think Mississippi State's going to be able to move the ball, win this one for Mike Leach. So I'm going to pay the small amount of points with the Bulldogs. Moving on to our next one on January 2nd, Mike, the Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas. This is a 1 p.m. Eastern kick. USC favored by 2 over Tulane. Looks like we got a total in the market right now of 63.5. Tulane's at full strength in this one. They don't have anything of note to talk about. USC, big piece of news for them is Caleb Williams came out and said he's going to play. He had been banged up at the end of the conference title game, just like Max Dugan, who we were talking about, have been. But Williams is going to play. So good news for USC there. Obviously, Travis Dye, their starting running back. He was knocked out for the season in November. But USC, you do have to say they've run the ball pretty well even without him. We'll see if they can in this game because USC is without 2 really good interior offensive linemen, center Brett Nealon and the guard Andrew Voorhees. NFL very interested in both those guys. And I think that's about it as far as as far as important contributors. Mike, who do you like in this game?
So my buddy Chife does a lot of digging and research for me, and he told me USC and the over is the play here, and I obviously make my own decisions and sort of like dig into my head, and my head tells me that this is the game that USC kind of didn't want. I think they're going to be a little less motivated than we might expect for this. You get into New Year's 6 and it's good and fun and all, but then you get matched up against a group of 5 and there's no winning. There's just no winning. You're supposed to blow them out. And I know the line is lower. I was surprised. I thought USC just from 10,000 foot view would be, maybe a 6-point favorite or something like that because people don't know how good Tulane is. They don't know about Pratt. They don't know about Their dynamic rushing attack. They don't know anything about Tulane. Tulane's 8-2 in their last 10 games against the spread. They're a very, very difficult out. USC's not going to be up for this game. Caleb Williams or not, I think Tulane's going to win this game outright. And I just think it's a lack of motivation, because if you're USC, if you win the game, you're supposed to whoopee-doo. If you lose the game, then you're embarrassed, and Lincoln Riley sucks, and all the Oklahoma fans start stomping on you on Twitter. There's really not a win here for them. Whereas Tulane, listen, this is the big stage. It's New Year's Six. It's what we fought for. This is why we played UCF twice and battled and battled and battled. We're here for this. And Pratt said he's coming back. And I like Tulane here, and I like the money line.
Yeah, you were talking about the over, and that's what I'm gonna end up playing here. I with the side. I'm sort of mixed feelings on it. Like initially I was leaning Tulane, but then I had heard that Caleb Williams was going to play. This is back when the line had opened and Tulane was like a small favorite. But then I heard Caleb Williams was almost assuredly going to play. And so then it was like, well, that's a really bad line then. USC should be favored. And so then I had been on USC, but where the line is right now, my adjusted line, when you bake in, like, because you got to nick USC for the multiple stud interior offensive linemen that aren't playing and different stuff like that. My adjusted line in this game is USC minus 2.1. So I'm just not showing any. That's basically what the Vegas line is. I'm not showing any value there. Where my system is showing value on, it's the over. My adjusted total on this game is 70.5. The live total is 63.5, whatever. Both these offenses match up really good. And Mike, you were getting into some of this. USC has the awesome offense, of course, but USC defense is an abomination. They can't stop anybody on the ground. They haven't been able to all season. And they all it's not only an efficiency thing where you can just, get the 4, 5, 6 yard gains at will. They also allow the explosive runs. This is really bad news with Tajay Spears coming, into this game. Tajay Spears has run for 120. What is it? He's like 120 yards plus in the last 7 games. I think it was. He's been going ballistic and getting into the open field, ripping off the long runs. I think he ran for 199 against UCF in the AAC title game. He's going to have a huge game here. Also, Michael Pratt should have an okay game. USC's pass defense is better than the run defense, but it still is not good. The only thing that they do good is the USC. Whether you want to call it luck or whether you want to, whatever it is, they've been forcing turnovers for most of the season. Although when that dries up, that's when you start to see everything start to go against USC, sort of like the Utah game or whatever. But I do project offensive success, of course, for Tulane. And then what, you flip the field. USC, when Caleb Williams has been playing and when he's been anywhere near 100%, they move the ball on anybody. Like Caleb Williams by himself. Now, Jordan Addison is, I might have missed Jordan Addison's name when we were talking. Jordan Addison has opted out. He going to the NFL early, but he had been nicked up. USC hadn't gotten as much out of Jordan Addison, I think, as maybe they thought they would. Even without him, USC is still going to be able to move it. But the ground game, the ground defense for Tulane, that is specifically their weakness. Be interesting to see if USC runs on them. But either way, I think they're going to score. So I'm going to go over the 63.5.
Solid.
Moving on to our next one, the Citrus Bowl on Monday, January 2nd. We got a 1 p.m. Eastern kick in this one. I don't even know if this game is available to bet after the Drew Brees news, where the New Jersey folks order the sportsbooks to take this one down.
Still on DraftKings right now.
Wow. Oh,
14.5.
Okay. Put it back up. Yeah, so LSU favored by 14.5 over Purdue. Anyone at home that doesn't know what we're talking about, just Google Drew Brees, the Citrus Bowl, and you'll see. And we got a total of 56, a whole bunch of ones to opt-outs and injuries to get through here. With LSU, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, is going to play, so that's good. Armani Goodwin, the running back, looks like they're going to get him as well. He had been nicked up, but I think he's returning for this one. The receiving core for LSU has been decimated. Jack Beck is in the transfer portal. Kyron Lacey is injured. Chris Hilton's injured. Keishon Butte is the big one. Keishon Butte, a couple of weeks ago, had said, I'm coming back to school. And we all just assumed he was going to play in this game because why would you not if you're coming back? But then he just reverse course, hardcore, and then was like, yeah, actually on second thoughts, I'm going to the NFL and opting out of the ballgame. So you will not see Keishon Butte in this game. They're blocking tight end. Cole Taylor's out. They had a couple of ancillary offensive linemen out, but the defense got hit really hard. Ojolari opted out, the stud edge rusher. The guy on the other side, Ali Gay, he opted out. Their nose tackle, Jacqueline Roy, opted out. So LSU only has one starting defensive lineman that will be playing in this game. And then the secondary was the other thing that got hit real hard. Starting corner, Jay Ward, he has opted out. And then Mekhi Garner is also an opt-out as well in the cornerback room. And then they had a backup that's injured. They had a couple other backup corners that are in the transfer portal. So depth could be an issue there at corner as well. Mike, or actually, I haven't run down the Purdue ones yet. I got to do that because we got some important
Purdue's worse. Yeah,
there's so many freaking opt-outs in this one. Purdue, Aiden O'Connell, the quarterback, has opted out. Too bad. I want to see that kid again. Kobe Lewis in the transfer portal, but that's fine because Maccabee, the running back, he's taking over. But Charlie Jones, the stud receiver, he is opted out. And then Payne Durham, their starting tight end, good receiving tight end. And then the starting left guard, Spencer Holstedge, who's like good player, he opted out. And then cornerback Corey Trice, who was a pretty solid player too. He is heading to the NFL draft as well. All right, Mike, I think I hit mostly everything there. Who do you like in that game?
Yeah, so obviously you've got a quarterback situation at Purdue, not just with Drew Brees and his, the whole gambling thing, but Austin Burton, I think, is going to be the starter. Who's been around for 100 years. Yeah. So he was at UCLA 1,000 years ago. Hasn't played in a very long time, and O'Connell obviously was the heart and soul of that offense. LSU was missing a lot of key players, but they're a very young football team as well. They've got a lot of guys that are going to step up, make big plays for them. Jaden Daniels is coming back. That's a sign of leadership, and they're going to rally around him. 14.5 is a lot. It's a lot. But to me, when you talk about talent versus talent, Purdue has no way to stay in this football game. That's just my take on it. I would lay the 14.5, hope it gets down to 13.5, which won't. And take LSU. Just too many guys that you don't know about. I mean, for every opt-out, there's Mason Taylor, or somebody that Purdue just can't match up with, that they have no solution for. And Jaden Daniels. Harold Perkins, yeah. And everybody talks about Keishon Butte. He wasn't even one of their top 4 receivers this season. So whoop-de-doo, opt out. Go ahead, be a 4th-round pick. Nobody cares. Jaden Daniels is going to run all over this team too. I mean, if he's just Purdue has no way to box him in here. So there's no real props yet, which is surprising to me. There were no props on the USC Tulane game either. So I mean, they're waiting obviously for a couple of days. I think you're going to see props. But whatever the Jaden Daniels number is for rushing, take the over on it. It's been something you could win consistently every year, every week. I mean, and they're gonna probably thump this Purdue team pretty bad.
Yeah, so I am going to take the points with Purdue here, but this is one where it's closer to the margins. So I'm just going to sort of hold my nose and jump. LSU is going to have a hard time throwing here because of how decimated the receiving core is, and in terms of depth, they're really low as well. But the rushing offense, to Mike's point, has been really, really good. And Daniels, he playing in the game, ostensibly going to be 100%. He was another quarterback who'd been nicked up at the end of the year, but they're going to have to LSU. They're going to have to sort of lean heavily into the rushing offense, which they already did, and it was already good. Like LSU, I think their run game was number 4 success rate in the nation. So I think that's where they're going to attack Purdue. Purdue's run defense, okay. They rank number 40 in success rate. But obviously Daniels and Goodwin are going to have some success. I would agree with Mike's take on the over with Daniels. It's just that I think LSU going to be a bit one-dimensional on offense. And then the Purdue offense, they're out a bunch of these different guys, but Maccabee is playing the starting running back, and Maccabee was playing really well at the end of the year. I think he's going to have a little bit of success again, going up against LSU defensive line. That's only one starter there or whatever. And then the cornerback room for LSU is just as decimated, if not more so, than the Purdue receiving core. We'll see with this Austin Burton kid, but at least he's experienced. He's a veteran. So it's not like, the Iowa-Kentucky game where it's like, two kids who have never taken a snap before or whatever. So I'm going to take the 14.5 points. Mike, moving on to our last one of the day. We probably got 5 minutes to talk about this one. Rose Bowl, Pasadena, California, obviously Monday, January 2nd. We got a 5 p.m. Eastern kickoff on this one. Utah is favored right now in the market over Penn State by 2.5 points. We got a total of 52.5. The opt-outs and injury news of note here. Parker Washington, the star receiver for Penn State, has opted out of this game. Their stud left tackle, Fashanu, he said that he's coming back next year. Everybody thought he was going to jump into the NFL draft, but he was injured at the end of the season. So we're going to have to see if he's playing. He was a questionable designation. Joey Porter for Penn State, the stud lockdown outside corner, he is also opted out and into the NFL draft. On the Utah side, Tavion Thomas, their running back. But I don't think that one really matters. You saw, because he did that in early to mid-November, I guess mid-November, because he had gotten injured. I'm not sure if he could have played in this one anyway. But Utah's got a 3-headed running back monster that's been really, really good without him. Dalton Kincaid, that one hurts a lot more, the stud tight end, especially because Brant Keithy, you recall, at the beginning of the season, they had 2 stud tight ends. Now both those guys are gone because Keithy got hurt for the season. They do have a couple. I mean, Utah, it's like Iowa. They have like a conveyor belt of tight ends. So I mean, we saw one of them that USC couldn't tackle. It was like a berserker. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys do. The other big one on the Utah side, Clark Phillips, who basically just cancels out Joey Porter, Utah's stud cornerback. I loved watching that Clark Phillips kid this year. He's a dog, right? Like, I mean, and you cannot get him off of you. But anyway, we'll talk more about that in the spring. Mike, with all that said, who do you like in this one?
I've liked Utah all season long. I was very disappointed in, what I saw in the Florida game. And I think when you look back at that game, Utah is kicking themselves too, because it was not a very good Florida team. They just didn't game plan well. They didn't come out prepared. But since then, they've been a pretty solid team. UCLA, that was a blip. But what I saw from them, against USC both times, but especially the second time, they're a physical football team that's just really hard to handle. They're never going to stop. They're never going to quit. They're always going to keep coming at you. Penn State, they got a solid running game. Sean Clifford loses his best target, though. Defensively, I think they're pretty good up front. They tackle well. But this game's made for Utah to outlast them and win this football game by maybe a touchdown, maybe 10 points. So, lay the 2.5, take Utah. They're the better football team. They're the more physical football team. And I think, honestly, Penn State wants to prove something. They lose to Ohio State and Michigan every year, and James Franklin can't win the big one and all that stuff. I don't think they're going to be able to match up well against this Utah team. I think they're just going to keep punching them in the mouth, and eventually they're going to win this football game and cover.
Yeah, I'm gonna because of the opt-outs, like I was leaning towards Utah earlier on, and then I was thinking maybe. Oh wait, can you hear me?
Yep.
Mike, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, wait. I can hear you. Okay. My thing just got knocked out. So I was sort of bouncing around on the team that I preferred. But the over for me, that is a far cleaner handicap, especially with these opt-outs, right? Like you take out the lockdown corners on both sides, enormous downgrades on both defenses. And the Utah defense, the thing they're good at is generating pressure. So Clifford's going to have to be prepared to have some heat on him. But what they're not as good at, it's run defense. And in particular, they give up a bunch of explosive runs. Now, Penn State's run game has definitely been hit or miss this year. It's not very efficient. So you do have to say that. However, one thing Penn State's ground game is good at, it's hitting home runs. That Nick Singleton kid's a sprinter. They have explosion back there. I think Penn State's going to be able to nick them for a couple of the long runs. And I also think Utah's going to be able to do what they do, even without the tight ends, and manufacture some offense here. Cam Rising, he wants to have an impressive performance here, the Utah quarterback. And with Joey Porter, et al., not there for Penn State, might have a shot to do some of that. And like I said, they have tight end depth even behind the guys that left. Penn State plays at tempo too. So I think this one's got a decent shot at going over. Defenses aren't great shakes at that point. Only 52.5 seems like a fair deal to me. Okay, we're wanted to thank our our title sponsor one more time, and then we'll get to any questions before we get out the door and let you guys get off to your college football Saturday. But we wanted to thank DraftKings Sportsbook. Betting pros and DraftKings Sportsbook are teaming up to bring you guys a wild offer this season. You can get $50 free bet when you make your first time deposit. Use the promo code CFB Pros to get that. Make a minimum deposit of $5 or more, and then use your $50 free bet on the college football action today. You can find that link in the video description or pinned in the live chat, and sign up to get started. We'll see if we have any. Looks like we don't have any questions, Michael. So I guess that's it. We're out of time. We're going to get you out 2 minutes early today, guys. Thanks again to the title sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. For Mike Farrell, I'm Thor Nystrom. Good luck with your bets. Enjoy the playoff games, and let's go win some money.